Okay, so we have the bottom of our door all prepped and we are ready to go ahead and install our door. So the first thing that we want to do, especially if you have if you're just replacing a door and this is an older home, you want to try to see how level your opening actually is. So of course this is new construction and we had just built this, so we're pretty darn close. We're actually, looks like we're perfect. But let's say if we were replacing a door and over time your house has settled a little bit and we have to correct that. So what happens if one side is a little bit higher than the other? Basically when you set your door in place, you're gonna have to tilt your door. Otherwise your door will be hitting your jamb. So if it's really severe, we're gonna have to correct that. And usually what you do is you just put, you take some shims here. Got a couple wood shims. And you would just put a couple on one side, just like so, until you get level. Obviously we're not level now because our floor is level. But you would just raise that up and down until you are level. Then when you go to put your door in, we're gonna dry fit our door here in a second. We would get our door fairly close before we actually start installing it. I'm not a huge fan of this method. It's kind of one of those things like you kind of just have to do it. Otherwise your door's not gonna work. If you did want to take the time and actually try to make this as close as possible, what you could do is you could cut a shim, a larger shim that's the width of your door and goes from whatever height this is down to 0. The reason why I'm not a big fan of this shim trick is because later on we're going to go ahead and take some silicone and make a bed of silicone in here for the door to sit in. And if it doesn't sit tight to the floor, you don't have a good seal to keep water out. So if you install the door properly the rest of the way, you should be okay. But the better way to do it is to actually get a good thick shim that's the width of your wall. On this side it's that thickness that brings it level, and you bring it all the way down to 0. So your door would sit nice and flat all the way across here. Luckily our floor is nice and level. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and prep our door. This is our 3-foot exterior door here. It has our jambs already in place, and it usually comes with this nice brick molding so we don't have to do any trim work on the outside. It also usually comes with some of these cardboard corners. You just want to go ahead and take those off. Throw those to the side. And then also, usually these exterior doors here come with a bag, usually of installation instructions. But more importantly, it comes with a couple of these little shims that usually you don't need. They're nice to have. But it comes with these screws, and you want to make sure you don't lose these screws. Because we're going to use these screws in our hinges here. So make sure you keep these screws. And also a lot of times these doors have a little plug that goes through the lock. That way whenever you transport the door doesn't swing open. A lot of times it just has a little plastic part on this side. You just pop that off and then push that through the door here to get it out. Sometimes they're in there pretty good, but we'll get that out. But the next step that you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna do a dry fit, just to make sure that you got your opening framed out the right way, and make sure you got that correct rough opening. So you don't wanna go ahead and put silicone down or anything because your door might not fit. You might have read the rough opening wrong. So you just want to do that double check. So go ahead and take your door, lift it up, and set it right on the bottom in the opening and push it into place, and just make sure that the door fits in the opening. So we got the rough opening right, and we're ready to frame. So go ahead and take this guy out. And then one last check that you want to do is you want to see how plumb your shoulder studs are. And really what you want to do is check the one that the hinges go on, because if that one's not perfectly plumb, you're going to have some issues with shimming. It can be done. You just want to make sure that you have enough room for play so that your door can sit in there plumb. So this is our hinge side. Looks like we're pretty plumb here. All right, so we are ready to install the door. So what we're gonna do next is we're actually just gonna flip this door around here and get it ready to put in place here. Lean it back. I got that little plug out so our door opens, but we're gonna keep it closed for right now. And now we're gonna take some silicone. We got a new tube here. Just clip off the end. And then a lot of people forget with any caulk to poke it out. You wanna make sure you poke it out, otherwise you'll pop your tube. So we'll get it started. And we're gonna silicone around the door, and we're also gonna silicone on the bottom here to make a bed of caulk here. So, got an old gun here. All right. All right, so the first part that we're gonna do here is we're gonna make a bed for the door to sit in. So I'm gonna get these corners really good so no water comes in. Don't be afraid to use a lot of silicone here. And we'll go ahead and come across the back, and we'll get this other corner. Big glob here. You wanna make sure that you have plenty. Okay. Now notice that when I put this in, I put it in the corners, and then I also put it towards the back here, the back of the door. I don't want to put it towards the front of the door, because if any water comes down, it's going to come down and work its way to the front of here. If we put the silicone towards the front, it's basically just going to make a dam and the water can't get out. So we're not going to have huge waterfalls of water here. It's just so if any condensation or moisture gets behind here, it can roll out. So just make sure you keep that that bed of silicone towards the back. One other thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and make a bead all around the brick mold of our door. And this one, you don't wanna get it too thick. You just wanna make sure it's continuous. This is gonna help keep those breezes out. And again, I'm not gonna do the bottom of the door because I want any water that does get in there to come out. I'll go ahead and do this side. All right, and then I'm gonna do the top. I'm just gonna lean it forward here a little bit. All right, so now we are ready to go ahead and put this door in place. So I'm gonna take my shims and put them inside because we're gonna go in there next. Get my nails in place. And then we can flip this door back around and we can get it in the opening. Now when you put the door in, if you noticed, I've kind of kept it tilted back. I want to try to get this sill plate all the way back as far as possible before I push it into place. That way we're not messing up our bed of silicone that we just put in there. You also want to try to go ahead and get it as centered as possible. All right, and then just push it straight back. Okay, so now our door is in the opening. We'll go ahead and go on the inside and start the shimming process. Okay, so our door is now set in place. We are now on the inside and we're gonna get ready to do the shimming process. If we close the door here, hopefully we can still see. Keep in mind that your door isn't secure, so you wanna keep a hold of it. So we can tell a lot from just having the door in place here. You can see that we're actually binding on the bottom and we are tight on the top here. We have a big gap down here. If I was to put the level on that jamb, I would see that this door is leaning too far this way. So I don't even need to put the level on it to tell that I'm not where I want to be. But what I'm kind of looking at here is I'm looking to see that we have about equal spacing between the door jamb and the shoulder stud. That way it gives us some play to move this door back and forth to get it plumb. And then I'm also looking to see where exactly we have to kind of start here. So I can see we have pretty good spacing on the bottom and I can see that we're pretty tight up here. So I know that I'm probably gonna have to push that door that way. And I just wanna make sure that I have enough room, which I do. So we're pretty center in the door. We can go ahead and open this guy up. Again, remember the door's not secure, so always keep an eye on it. And what I'm gonna do, this is my hinge side. So I'm gonna put a level on it and I'm gonna see that, I just pushed it. I'm gonna see that we are a little too far this way. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna push it to about where we need to go and get it plumb. Okay. All right, we're pretty close right there. It's not gonna stay until we get shims in there, but it's gonna be a good enough start. So I'm gonna go ahead and close the door again. And I can see we have a pretty even reveal all the way around. And this side, we're getting there. So we can take some shims here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and shim the top first. And I'm gonna grab some nails. So we have just normal wood shims here. And we have some 16, or actually 8-penny galvanized trim nails here. So you want to make sure that these nails are galvanized, just because if any moisture gets behind there, you want to make sure that they're galvanized. And these wood shims, you can see that they get skinny at one part and thicker at the other part. When you put these guys in, you want to make sure that you reverse them. So we have the skinny part going the same way. You want to take one and reverse it. And the reason why you do that is you basically just made a parallel line now. As you pull these apart, that distance gets skinnier, and as you push them together, now you get a thicker shim. The reason why you want to do that is you want to keep this jamb parallel to the shoulder stud. You don't want that jamb starting to bend, because then when you try to shut your door, it's not going to close. So you want to make sure you keep everything nice and square, and you do that by reversing your shims here. So we'll figure out how many we need here. Looks like we're going to need quite a few. Get a couple ready here. So we'll reverse every other one. Oops. All right, let's see how that does. All right, so that's a good start. So what I'm gonna do, and it really helps to have a second person here. You can have one person put the shims in, then pull the door tight, And then what you'll do is you'll have the other person standing there with the level taking a reading. And you can add shims and take away shims until you get it perfectly plumb. If you also notice, as I'm holding these shims here, I'm gonna shim where there is a hinge. If you put your shims in between, basically all the force is on your hinges, and as you open and close that over time, this part of the jamb is gonna be moving in and out, and it's just gonna make for a shaky door. So if you go ahead and put those shims right where the hinges are, it's gonna make that door really solid and you won't have any problems down the road. So we'll go ahead and get this first set of shims in, and we'll go ahead and show you how to shim the rest of the door. All right, take the next one out. All right, that looks pretty good. So hold right there. All right, you're still in the middle?
Yep.
All right, so we got our first shims in place. We actually had to take a few out there because we needed to bring the door over a little bit. But if you see, I got these shims lined up right with a screw hole. So these hinges come with 4 screws. If you remember when we took that package off the door, it came with a few extra screws. What we're actually gonna do is we're gonna take one of these screws out and replace it with a longer one. That way it goes all the way through, and this jamb side of the door will be held tight to our framing with screws, and we're not just gonna rely on nails. Again, we wanna get this side of the door really secure to the wall, because the hinge side is what's gonna take all the force of the door opening and closing over the years. They come with those extra screws. We'll take a screw out and put one of the longer screws in so it hits the jamb. So it's real important when putting those shims in that you get it lined up with the screw that you're gonna take out. Doesn't really matter which one. I usually try to do the middle ones, just so those shims are right in the middle of the hinge. And you wanna make sure that the screw hits the hinge. So now that we got the top in place, we'll just check with a level one more time. And reads nice and plumb. So we know that we don't need to shift this door in and out anymore. So what we can do is we can take another set of shims here. We'll close the door, and very carefully, without moving the door, we'll just put as many shims in here as needed, just so it tightens up. Okay, so I got 2 in there. I'm gonna throw a third one in here just to, every once in a while, if you have your brick mold already in place, you might have to cut a little bit of the thicker part off your shim. So you can just take a utility knife, score it, and break it right along that line. And now you can have some extra room to play with here. All right, I want to get a third one in. That's why I broke a little bit of that thicker part off, so I can stick that in. All right, so I'm just pushing it just so it's snug. I'm not hammering this in. I just want it to be snug, so when we go ahead and put a trim nail in there, it'll stay for us. So I got that just snug enough. I got it right where I'm gonna put a screw, and I'm gonna show you how to actually tack this in place with a nail. So I'm just putting nails in here so we can just tack it in place. Again, it's gonna be the screws that's really gonna do all that work. But one little tip that I got for a nice finish look here is I actually take this weather stripping and pull it back here, and if we come up here, can actually see when I installed this one, I put that nail right behind this weather stripping. You want to be really careful not to hit it with your hammer because you'll bust this up. So you'll take your time. But now once that goes back over, it hides that nail and there's no putty, and it's just a quick way to do it. So I will pull this weather stripping back here, make sure my nail hits that, hits those shims. And real carefully, I'm going to take my time and just get this nail right in there. You also want to make sure that your door's pushed tight to your outside here. All right, just take your time so you don't hit that weather stripping. All right, so now you can see our door is nice and plumb, hasn't changed. You can also tell because wherever we put our door, it stays, it doesn't swing. So looks like we're doing a pretty good job here. So the next part that we want to do, we got the top and bottom shimmed. We want to go ahead and do the same exact thing with this middle hinge and get some shims behind there. So grab a few shims. We'll make sure that we're alternating again. Put just as many as we need. All right, looks like 3 is gonna just do the trick. Line it up with our screw. And now this middle one, it's real important before you nail it to make sure you didn't push those shims too hard. Just go ahead and put your level, and it's a good idea to have a 6-foot level. We're still plumb, but what you really want to look for is that you have a nice tight seam here with your level, that there's no like belly in the door. Sometimes if you put those middle shims in, you might push them in just a little bit too far. This middle will come out and your level will actually rock on that door. So when you close it, this middle hinge actually pushes the door out, and then you'll have some difficulties trying to shim the rest of the door. So make sure it's still plumb, and make sure that you don't have any rockiness with your level. And you can come in with another nail here, and we'll go ahead and nail this one off as well. All right. Just nail it so it's flush and check one more time. All right, we're good. All right, so this hinge side now is pretty secure. All we need to do now is take those screws that came with the package. You should have 3. And we'll come and take one screw out and replace it with one of these longer screws. Now with these screws here, you want to just make sure you put it in just so it touches. So now we have threads on the screw. If you drive it really, really tight, it's actually gonna suck this door closer to the jamb. So you wanna just put it in just so the head touches the hinge. All right. Make sure they're nice and flush. Already did the middle one, so let's go ahead and do this bottom one. Again, make sure you take out the screw that corresponds with where you put the shims. All right, nice and flush. If you leave that screw out a little bit, it's actually gonna hit the other side of this jamb, and it's gonna pinch when you try to close this door, and your door won't close very well. All right, so we'll just do a test here real quick. All right, looks like we're doing pretty good. So this side here is still flapping, so we're gonna go ahead and take care of this side next. All right, so this side, you can throw a level on it. Theoretically, it should be plumb. But this side, we're not too awful worried about it being plumb. because you're not going to notice it. This side, if it's not plumb, your door won't stay still. This side, we actually want to pay more attention to the aesthetics of the door. And what I mean by that, I can tell by just putting a level here. We're tight at top and bottom, and we actually have about, I don't know, about 3/16, maybe an 1/8 inch gap here. So I know that this door side is bowing in a little bit. So what's gonna happen if we come in here and shut the door, we can see that we are tight on top and tight on bottom with our reveal, and we have a little bit bigger of a hole here in the middle. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna throw some shims in here with the door closed and try to make this reveal exactly the same all the way across. So go ahead and keep the door shut. I'm gonna grab some new shims here. Now, just like with hinges, it's a good idea this side we're just gonna throw in as many shims as needed, but two spots that we really wanna focus on is right behind the strike plate where the doorknob's gonna hit. Again, that's gonna take a lot of force over the years with this door opening and closing. So we wanna get shims behind here, there to support it. And we also wanna get shims behind the deadbolt to make sure that that has support as well. So we got some new shims here. It's also important to note, just because our seam here is where we want it, we still want to put shims behind there. And we're just going to put enough just so it stays secure. We don't have any hinges to worry about, so just put it so it's sitting there. You don't want to push it too tight, otherwise it won't close. And we'll come in here and get right behind the deadbolt. Now this one, we want to close that gap a little bit, so I'm going to actually push another one in here and keep pushing it till our reveal is about the same. So that looks pretty good to start with. Going to get one right behind the kick plate, or strike plate here. Let's try this. It's going to be a little too thick. All right, reveal looks pretty good. Get some on the bottom here as well. All right, so if we look on up here, looks like maybe our middle got a little tight, so we'll back off just a hair here. All right, but now it looks like our reveal is pretty good all the way across. So very carefully, we want to open the door. Okay. Make sure we're pushed tight to the outside here. That's one of the biggest mistakes. People get this nice and neat, and then they forget to push the door tight. So the door is actually sitting crooked in the jam. So this side, we're gonna go ahead and grab some nails and nail all these shims off. I'm gonna try to do the same thing of getting behind the weather stripping here. I'm gonna bring these guys down just a hair so we're right on that kick plate or strike plate here, and get a nail in. And every once in a while you get extremely unlucky and hit a nail in your shoulder stud. If that happens, what you can do is you can take another shim here and protect your door and try to pull that nail out. All right. And you can just move the nail up a little bit. You still want to try to get through that shim. Alright, so after you get each one nailed in place, it's a good idea to just shut the door and make sure your reveal is still the same. Every once in a while when you put the nail in, it sucked it a little bit tighter. And you can just take a pry bar and carefully pry it out just a little bit and stick another shim there and then drive the nail back in. So we got those two. We'll go ahead and get this bottom one. Again, make sure that door is pushed nice and tight to the outside of the wall here. So we're nice and secure there. The side is in place. And now when we shut our door, we have a nice reveal all the way around. So one last thing that you want to check when shutting this door is to make sure that the top of your door is flush with your jamb and the bottom of your door is flush with your jamb. If you shut the door and you see that the top's sticking out a little bit, that'll tell you that you accidentally didn't push the door tight to the outside of your wall. If you go back and check that it is tight to the wall, then that means that somehow the bottom two of your jambs kind of got out of plumb. So if that happens, you might have to take the door out, or if you catch it right away, you can fix it and then try to get your jambs back in place. But with new construction, your jambs should be in place. That's why we kept that bottom plate in when raising the walls. And it looks like the door shuts nice and good. So we are set. This door is now fully installed with nails. So we'll now go ahead and come on out to the outside, and we will focus on getting this sealed up with window wrap.